Okay, let's get things underway. So, hello everybody. My name is Chris. I'm the CEO of ISION. It's great to have you all here today. I appreciate your attending. I'm very excited today because I have the distinct privilege of getting to introduce Joe Montgomery of Group Up. Group Up is a new transformative community with the mission of helping firms and firm leadership build the businesses that they want and deserve. And Joe is the former partner, a former partner of Montgomery and Company CPAs out of Greenville, South Carolina. So obviously he's intimately familiar with the challenges that firms and founders are going through. So hi, Joe.
Hey, Chris, good to be here. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thank you so much for showing up today. We're very excited to have you on.
Excited to be here, excited to talk.
Wonderful. Well, our topic today is emerging from the fog, and it's going from chaos to clarity and how to regroup as a firm and leverage the power of the group. Powerful stuff from you, Joe. So why don't we do this? Why don't I go ahead and have you take it away here, and you and I can have a conversation kind of as we go through, what you have to share with us today.
Yeah, sure thing. Thanks, Chris. And thanks for everybody for joining on today. Excited to share hopefully a couple ways that we as firms can just regroup and think how to start 2021 a little bit better and with intention. So, right, this has been a tough year, obviously. I think before we do explore some of these tools, want to reflect with a little bit about where we've been. And so I was right there with you guys. Many of you are, I'm guessing, firm owners, and whether you're sole props or running teams of 10 or 20, employees, this was a crazy year. Jumping in with PPP, I remember the late nights. I remember the, probably 10, 15 Zoom calls a day, it felt like. Just ending the everyday exhausted. My wife and I personally had taken on the care of our grandparents kind of at the same time. So we had them living in our master bedroom downstairs, and we had the kids with us. We have two young kids, so we were balancing the homeschooling kind of thing. And it was crazy. I mean, I just remember every day feeling exhausted, and sometimes incredibly reactive. And, then we had the tax extension, and we kind of had this tax season that never ended. The way we framed it to our team, it was like, in nautical terms, you're just going through the doldrums. You're just out there at sea, kind of adrift with no wind, just kind of stuck. And we felt really good about what we did with our clients. We helped a lot of clients. We did webinars. We teamed up with some other firms, but it was tough. And we made the decision, me and my wife personally, to launch Group Up at about July. So that was going on as well. And started talking to a number of firm owners just like you, and learning that people are losing team members, people are losing clients. In some cases, people lost loved ones. And we're all juggling this new balance, work from home. And what I found out is that some of us, including Montgomery and Company, we ended up taking a little bit of a step back as business owners. And in some ways, I wonder if we as firm leaders, in helping our clients, we forgot how to run our own business, our own firm. And I like to think of I've been flying a little bit, carefully I'll say, but just got back from a trip in Florida, helping a firm in Florida. And, they give the oxygen mask, if something bad happens, put on the oxygen mask. And they always tell you to put on your own first. But I feel like we as a profession kind of had to put on our own mask, but we also had to put on everybody else's mask. And some of us may have spent so much time doing that we realized our team got really disconnected in the process, right? Our teams are at home wondering where we're going. And so we can go ahead and switch to the next slide, Chris. I think something that's important to remember is what's at stake. And I think about why we're here, right? What are we trying to do? And I think about our team. I think our team's sanity is at stake. Our ability to attract and retain good talent. Our firm's own profit, and certainly our family balance. But then I think we can get this, if we get this right, or continue to get it right, we're going to see a lot of businesses succeed that would have failed. And I know many of you saved your clients' businesses, and that's awesome. I think, what would it look like if 2021 was the year of the client? If we made it all about our client, what would that look like? So we can go ahead and switch to the next, Chris. So how do we regroup? How do we, as a profession, how do you as a firm leader, how do you regroup your team? What does that look like? So today we'll talk about a couple of tools. Let's go ahead and into the next, Chris, if we can. And these tools will help us get from maybe a place, maybe you're feeling alone. Maybe you're feeling like there's not a lot of structure anymore. We have work from home policies to work out. We don't have this big picture, incredibly reactionary, possibly. We're starting to revert, maybe rule by gut instead of data. And we're feeling maybe a little bit out of our community, possibly. So what would it look like to go from there to having a unified team with clear roles, all working behind a clear, compelling vision, where we have laser focus on where we're going together, how we're going to get there. We've made it tangible with a 3-year target. And we're working it consistently. We have this operating rhythm kind of going as a team, and then plugged into a powerful community. So that's what we'll look at today.
This is really powerful, Joe. I think, starting with the top left here, the notion of being alone. I think leaders, particularly leaders who show, really good vulnerability sometimes. Tim Cook comes to mind here. I think he came out and said that in his role, you think of, the CEO of Apple, right? So much pomp and circumstance and so forth around, his job. But he's come out and said very clearly that he views it as being perhaps the loneliest job he's ever had, right? And, you think about what everybody's going through in years such as this, where everybody is giving so much and there's so much, I'd almost say disequilibrium, more so than in prior years, obviously. The idea of having to really find ways to be resilient, right? And find ways to not only survive, but potentially thrive, in such an environment. This notion of moving to the right-hand side here, where you have a team, where you have people you can share with. And I think, speaking personally, I've gone certainly through a lot of bouts with that in my life. And a lot of times I don't want to bring it home with me, even though I'm working from home, right? The idea of having people I can share with and not burden necessarily my family and so forth. Obviously in your household, you have a lot going there with 3 generations under the same roof, right? So how do we start to tackle if you're feeling, loneliness in your role, or and so forth? First of all, is it unusual? I would say no. And I got curious when we were going to speak, by the way, when we knew we were going to come on. And I looked at the Harvard Business Review on this. Let's see if this resonates with what you're seeing here, Joe. And I'll quote, it says 61% of CEOs surveyed by Harvard Business Review believe that loneliness hinders their performance. First-time CEOs are particularly susceptible to this isolation. Nearly 70% of first-time CEOs who experience loneliness report that the feelings negatively affect their performance. Do you have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. That's so good and true. I think if we're not careful, we as leaders and as people, helping clients, whether this is you're on your own, sole prop, or you're leading a team, if we're not healthy, it kind of starts with us. If we're not healthy, if we don't have balance, if we don't have a community, and a place we can consistently go and work on our vision and our passions, and share our struggles too, I think our teams suffer, and in some cases our families can. And yeah, I think it's so important. Ties right into what we're talking about.
I really like that idea. Let's keep on going. So I know you have visions and ways to think about this. So go ahead.
Yeah. So a couple of ways. This is what we'll touch on today. What would it look like if you had a leadership team? I know some of you do, I'm sure. What would it look like if you put structure around that? If you had a really clear, concise vision. I know we go to conferences. I used to go to conferences with my dad. We were partners together. And we'd come out of those things with 10 pages of notes, right? And you go home, you go back to your firm, and they sit in a desk drawer. Or maybe you get some of them on a PowerPoint screen, but they kind of sit there. So what would it look like if you actually had one or two sentences around your vision that you could share with your team, share with your clients, share with your where you're trying to go? How do we put specifics behind that then? So bringing it down to, how do we set quarterly goals? What's a really simple process we can follow? What gets measured gets done. So how can we track our data better and actually operate based on data rather than gut? And then what's the rhythm? What does that look like? What's one that you can try? There's many different business philosophies out there. A lot of them are good. So there's no silver bullet here. I'm not trying to pretend that what you and I, Chris, are going to talk about is going to be something magical, but it is a system, a rhythm that maybe you can try if you don't feel like you have one, that can help you take the next step. This is something that we at Montgomery Company had to do. We did not do this necessarily intentionally. We went through a pretty dark 2-year period where we ended up losing almost 100% of our staff. And so we had to scramble and realize what is most important. How do we align a team? How do we create clarity around where we're going? And how do we be intentional? And I feel like COVID and this tax season has put that kind of pressure on a lot of firms. So those are things that we learned, and hope it's helpful. Let's go ahead and go on to the first.
That sounds great. Yeah, I like this framework. You know, I think seasoned to taste, but the framework makes a lot of sense to me.
I think the first, Chris, is leadership team. I know many of you that the common theme at conferences is, yeah, this is all good stuff, but what's our team going to think? Right. And the two partners, or if you're on your own, you may know exactly where you want to go, but how do you create scale? And how do you get to a place where you could work 20, 30 hours a week, still run your firm, still work on your firm, but not just be kind of a cog in the machine, as it were? So we believe that there's really 3 to 4 core seats in a firm that a firm going past 2 million must fill, and fill well, to succeed. And ultimately, there's going to be a process of delegation and elevating. And that's a vision, kind of visionary kind of person. This person is a leader. They have 20 really good ideas a week, and only one of them is good. They're often in a small firm. That is also the same person that holds the sales seat. But if you think about sales, right, that's a common struggle in accounting. Who actually on your team is checking your CRM, if you have one, checking your sticky notes and your incoming phone calls or email queues? If you have Lisio account, that helps a lot with that. But who's responsible for that? Who's owning that? Is it spread between multiple partners or staff? Or do you have somebody actually being intentional, following up with leads and prospects, doing outbound marketing? And then is there one person on your team that's aware and is checking all of your projects, making sure projects are done on time, making sure projects are done to quality? So those are some kind of example seats that we started to fill very early on that really helped my business partner, my dad, and I kind of get out of the weeds a little bit, start to be able to do what we are uniquely qualified to do, and start to grow our firm again. And what happened, Chris, I'm sure you've seen this on your team too, is we started to realize a benefit, which was, instead of me and my partner guessing what our employees thought, we had many representatives of us in our leadership team that had deep relationships with our team, and they knew exactly what our employees thought. And sometimes, instead of, oh, so-and-so quit, great, we didn't see this coming, this was a shock, it was, so-and-so's planning a transition in 3 months. Okay. And we knew that because they were best friends with the operations manager who was coaching them at lunch, once a month. Just something Dad and I could never do just by ourselves. So core structure, have a leadership team. It helped us a ton. We believe in it. We believe it's a key to scale. Chris, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, what you're getting into here, I think the biggest thing that we see, I certainly probably still even feel it, it's always the things that got you there, right? The extra hours, the super hard work, the fact that you can spread across just about any function in the company, sales, marketing, admin, like do it all, right? And then the notion that everything is still going to the founders, if you will, for so long, there has to be this, really, really strong follow through, desire first and follow through to pivot out of that to say, you know what, I do need to delegate better. I do need to elevate out of this. Working 80 hours a week isn't necessarily sustainable for me, the family, or the staff, because the staff want to take on more, right? It's the idea that everybody has to go through that pivot, right?
Mm.
There comes a time where the mental, whether it's, by a forcing function just by the business or, a mental decision saying, hey, I have to redefine my role in the company and build a leadership team. That to me is something that's very, very hard to let go of sometimes, isn't it? Like, is it maybe perhaps as much of a mental block as anything else?
Mm. Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah, let's keep going. Let's keep going. This is,
Cool.
we keep exploring here.
That's good. So once we have that team in place, and in a small firm, this might be two people, more than one, or one person can hold more than one of those seats. I think it's important that they just are all filled, right, by somebody in your team. So once you have that, then we can start to ask the question, hey, where are we going to go? And what's that look like? I recently was on a 14-mile hiking trip in the mountains of North Carolina. It was beautiful. It was a 3-day backpacking trip. But what gave me and the guys I was hiking with kind of the energy and drive to actually do the 14 miles over the 3 days was we knew what the view was going to look like. And we knew why we were doing it. And this is actually a picture of one of the views from that hike that you're seeing on the screen. And I feel like that's what it's all about. There's a lot of thoughts on this. We believe a vision statement can be as simple as 1 to 2 sentences. It should be really short, concise, and clear, very aspirational. This is the whole, when you've accomplished your mission, what's true in the world because of you and your team? What have you guys done? And I like to ask the question, if you're on your deathbed and you have 5 clients, some reason they're there with you. This is a little bit morbid, Chris, but and they say thank you for giving me this. What is this?
That's really interesting, Joe. Can I share a quick story about our exploration and our mission here?
Yeah, sure thing.
This is interesting because I tend to be very left-brained, analytical, and when Allison joined our company, she said, "What's your mission?" And I said, "Well," and I gave her this kind of dry, clinical, right? "We are here to help companies do X, Y, Z," right? It just sounded, it was technically correct, right? But it was just so bland. And she, guided me into helping make the mission more emotional, right? And so it wasn't the fact we provide a communication tool that maybe helps, firms be a little more secure, that kind of thing, Instead, she helped draw out of me something that was different. It's basically, we ended up on something that was, Lysio's mission is to empower professional service firms of all sizes to put their clients first, right? And that was the insight, right? The insight was it has to be emotional, it has to have a trigger, it has to make people feel like that had meaning or that has meaning, right? That's what people want to sign up for that, right? There's a lot of great mission statements out there that are probably pretty darn dry, right? Technically accurate again, but it's tapping into that emotion, like you say, that matters at the end of the day, and that's really hard to do. But I thank Allison for really kind of directing us to bring emotion into this, because it really is powerful when you do.
Mm, it is. That's good. And I think you and I were talking, but the vision statement, you know, as an example, like you think of the company Tesla. Um, you remember their vision statement, Chris?
Oh
I
yeah,
had it written down.
that's my favorite. Oh, you wrote it down?
I did.
Oh
Uh,
yeah. Tesla's mission is to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. Super
really,
powerful.
really short. We
Yeah.
as accountants love to overcomplicate this one. We love to make this one like a paragraph. The problem with a paragraph is no one can remember it, including you.
Yeah.
Um,
I think Tesla, they tap into, and not everybody's going to be, all about green everything, but Tesla knows that there's a large, very large segment of the world that's very relevant to them, that is going to care about that so much they're going to want to work there and they're going to want to buy their products, right? Tesla's mission is to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. That is so meaty and so wonderful, for exactly what they're trying to accomplish,
hmm.
right? And it's obviously very versatile as well.
So take the time. I mean, I would encourage you if you feel like you don't have a really clear vision statement that excites you, gets you out of bed in the morning, um, take maybe an hour or two with your leadership team and just start to think about these kind of big questions and throw some stuff on a whiteboard. Try to bring it all the way down to maybe a sentence or two that gets the whole room excited. And then one mistake too is not sharing it with your team. So we love to hoard some of our brilliance, right? We love to curse of knowledge. We do all this work and then we keep it in the partner room behind closed doors. And then we ask the question, well, why isn't our team motivated? And why don't people get our vision? It might be because we haven't shared it. That was a mistake we made. So the next part of this is great. We have a vision. You have a team. You have a vision. Let's start to make it tangible. It's not good enough to leave it in the clouds. It's just not. But what are the specifics that we can put behind it? So maybe spend another hour with your team and start asking questions like, hey, in 3 years from now, what revenue size are we? What's our profit percentage? How many clients are we providing advisory services for? Do we have a niche? How many clients are going to be in that niche if we're going to try to build one? Some firms are generalists and that's okay. What does our team size look like? Are you national? Are you taking clients on all over the nation? Or are you regional? Are you local? We found that incredibly helpful in getting unstuck from kind of a pretty dark phase in our firm. So let's go ahead and move on. All right, so this next bit focuses in on goal setting, right? We've all been through a lot of really inspirational conferences. We've had QuickBooks Connect and RootWorks and Woodard Group, and to name a few. It's easy to shiny object chase, isn't it? And I feel like CPA firms are actually really good at brainstorming ideas and kind of coming up with tasks and things we could do. But if you found yourself in an after tax season meeting or if you're doing pre-planning, and you end the day with a whiteboard of 80 items, and maybe you've even gone so far as to sign them to people and put due dates behind them, but 90 days goes by and you haven't done any of them, it might be because we had way too many to begin with. And we didn't have any focus around it. And I've been there. We made the same mistake. The other thing I've seen is, we'll bypass the first couple things. We either don't have a leadership team or we don't have a clear, compelling vision that's really tangible and specific. So then when we go set quarterly objectives together as a team, we don't know why we're setting them or where they're going or to what end they're going. I was with a leadership team, Chris, just a while ago. And at the beginning of the day, we do like a 2-day retreat. At the beginning of the first day, we started with a list of issues and we came up with almost 100, literally, ideas of what we could do this quarter. The first day we built a clear vision. And at the end of the second day, I asked the same question: how can we move the needle this quarter? And without even looking at the first board, we came up with 3 things. And that was it. Because once we took the time to clarify our vision and make it specific, everything else falls into place.
Makes a ton of sense, right? I mean, for the goals people are putting out there, X revenue growth, Y niche, et cetera, I think very few people are trying to cast that wide of a net anyway. And if we go back to another Apple, parallel, I think Steve Jobs was quoted once as saying, "I'm actually as proud of the things that we haven't done as the things that we have done."
Yeah.
Right. And I think there's that famous story that you know about with regard to the iPhone, right? Where Steve Jobs and Johnny Ives and the crew were all working on the iPad. They'd been working on the iPad for a couple of years when they realized that the whole market was about to change. And all their money they were making from the iPod, the music player, was in jeopardy because the music player, there's a good chance, is going to become embedded into phones. And he came back and said, "Stop the presses. We need to work on the phone. We need to build a phone now." And Apple, with tens of thousands of employees, essentially infinite resourcing, what did they do? Well, they took the iPad, which they already put a lot of effort in, and said, "You know what? We're going to put that entire project on hold." And so instead of trying to build an iPad and an iPhone at the same time, they said, "Forget it. We can only do one thing really, really well." So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do one thing really, really well. And the rest is history, right? We got the phone first, and it was a raging hit. And then many years later, then they came out with the iPad, right? So they, even with all their wealth, all their resources, they remained truly focused. And I would say that did, in fact, very much inure to their benefit.
What would it look like if we started 2021 with accounting firms across the country having a crystal clear vision of where they want to go, their whole team aligned behind it, and maybe doing one or a couple of things instead of 10, 20?
Powerful. The power of selection.
What would it do if that was true? Let's go ahead to the next one if we can. So kind of the opposite of that is, hey, these quarterly objectives that you set, when you have a goal setting kind of meeting with your team, maybe spend an hour or 2 on this as well. These should all be filtered by your 3-year target. We should ask the question, how is this helping us go to here? And if it doesn't, we get rid of it, we kill it. These aren't tasks, these aren't little teeny things, but these are major strategic objectives. So one of our clients recently, Chris, they said, these could be things like hire a tax manager. That's a pretty key hire for a lot of firms, but a way that the owners can become elevated out of maybe a tax kind of seat role, which I know is a common desire. Another firm said, hey, we want to launch a course. We want to launch a course for our ideal client, which was a construction client, on how to better handle their accounts receivable. We want to charge this number of dollars, and we want to go on this number of webinars. And that's going to build us a client list of our ideal prospects, talking about this really specific value proposition. And we're just going to mine that all year long. We're going to work that all year long. And that firm came up with that amount of focus based on having a good vision, clarifying it, knowing who they're serving. So would encourage you guys, as you're maybe doing some of this year-end planning, try to break it down into maybe 3 to 5 things at most. I like 3. I really like 3 per quarter. It doesn't mean you can't add, but I think our teams are burnout, right? Our teams are looking for focus and direction. And so I think to the degree that we can give them that, we'll get engagement around where we want to go, and a little less burnout. Just like the story of Apple that you mentioned. Thanks for sharing that.
It's a great year for servant leadership. I think people want to see us all working hard, leaders working hard alongside in the trenches, and people are burned out, right? It's the person in the field that's important. We obviously need to be mindful of ourselves, but I really like your idea of editing, right? We edit down to a manageable, meaningful subset of things to do. And I think there's a lot of really good examples of a lot of the best leaders in any industry being superior editors, right? They just get it down to what really matters here and don't overwhelm. Such a powerful concept that, like you say, does get lost in the fog.
Mm. Yeah, let's keep going. And so we built a really strong leadership team. We've assigned clear roles. We're blocking and tackling together. We have a crystal clear vision. We know where we're going. We made it concrete with some 3-year measurables. We're breaking this down into quarterly action chunks, right? That's doable and it's reasonable. The next thing we need to do is measure it. We do this for our clients, right? We sit down and we say, hey, if you were on a desert island with no access to your business, Mr. Client, and you had 3 to 5 numbers written in the sand every day that determine the health of the business, what would they be? And then we start tracking those in Fathom, right? We charge money, and that's advisory services. We do that for our clients. Do we do that for our firms? You know, what would it look like if we said, hey, what are the 7 to 10 numbers for an accounting firm that my team can start to track? We can start to see trending together. And these are leading indicators. These are going to tell us where the red flags are, and if we're getting off track with anything. So Chris, and I think you guys are going to be kind enough to share some of these numbers. It's just a simple Excel sheet. This is nothing complicated. We like technology, right, as accounting firms. So you don't have to go out there and find some complicated goal tracking app. A lot of companies do this in Excel or Google Sheets. Really simple. And I think we're going to be sharing that with everybody after the webinar today. And just a few examples of that.
I appreciate that, Joe. I think that's great stuff. And do you mind if I ask you a question here? I'm really
Sure.
curious how this works. Obviously, you can't fix what you don't measure, right? So we get the scorecard out there. We've got the leading indicators. You mentioned earlier how you're bringing people in. You know, the leadership team isn't doing this in isolation. But if we have shared goals, but let's say they might or might not be met consistently, right? How are firms, or how are you helping firms think about not only buy-in, but making sure the goals are hit? Are you using reward systems? Or, you know, how are we tethering, you know, the performance of the company with perhaps incentives or anything like that?
Yeah, that's good. So I can tell you how we did it, Chris. We had three bonuses. We called it a triangle bonus system. One was traditional, productivity-based, billing-based. So we take your salary times 3.5. If you bill over that number, we cut you a check for half of it. So if you're a heavy biller, right, your back office, you're always doing production. And usually that was tied into a few of their individual performance numbers, by the way. Then you get a check for that. If you're a salesperson, you like to bring in business, you're an influencer networker, we did a 10% new business bonus. So basically, you bring in a client to the firm, we give you 10% of the money as the firm collects it. I think that's important. And then also, and I think probably most important, is we do a team bonus. And we did it based on incremental EBITDA. So we're accountants, right? We can get this. But basically, if the owners get raises, we kind of took that factor out. And that was 30% for us, 30% of EBITDA growth, because we had aggressive growth goals. So the whole team kind of knew, hey, if the company's successful, then we're gonna be rewarded appropriately.
How did that work out, if you don't mind sharing?
It was different per person, because one mistake we made is that we incentivized everybody the same way, but not everybody works the same way. Different people care about different things.
Mm-hmm.
So we found we had a couple bookkeepers that really worked the productivity bonus because they're in the back office all day. Some of our client advisors who are kind of face of the company, interacting with our clients a lot. I think one of them got that new business bonus, pretty much once a quarter. So it worked out very well.
Tremendous. Tremendous. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, sure thing. And so we can do all the right things. We can have a strong leadership team. We can have a crystal clear vision. We can be filtering what we do by that vision and only doing the 3 most essential things per quarter. And we can be measuring our progress and reviewing that together. But if that's all we do we really have the ability to know when things are going wrong and pivot? So there's, many different ways to do this. I've seen daily huddles in firms. I've seen weekly leadership team meetings. I have up here basically a sample agenda. So if you're new to this, you're wanting to experience a little bit more momentum, sit down with your leadership team once a week and maybe just focus on, okay, how are we doing with our scorecard? Are any numbers off? Do we need to do anything based on this data? Anything different than we're doing now? This is just really, 5 minutes, a pulse check. How's our quarterly goals going? Are we on track? Or are we off track? Do we need to do anything? Any major news with clients or staff? News of the company. The to-dos we set last week, how do we do? Did we get them done? I think accountability is a big thing that's probably missing. At least it was in our firm. I think it's probably weak in a lot of firms. And then issues. So there's a set part of this meeting that you just focus right in on the issues. We're going to talk about them. We're going to identify what they are. We're going to discuss them. But then most importantly, we're not leaving this room until we solved 1 or 3 of them. So we may come up with 10. What 1 to 3 do we want to solve today? And then keep a running list of those issues. If we don't solve them all, which you never will, we talk about them next time. So weekly leadership team meeting was huge for us, just in building the relationships with our leaders and helping them learn how to lead the firm with us. And then making sure we're getting stuff done. And then it's rinse and repeat. We meet once a quarter. We do it all over again. We set new objectives. We review how we did on our 3 objectives for this past quarter. We review our vision. We make sure it hasn't changed. A client asked me recently, Joe, we have this big vision, but we're a team of 5 people. Can we really grow to $10 million? Like, are we kidding ourselves? And they asked, how do companies do it? And I said, I have no idea. I think if anybody really knew, they could bottle that up and sell it. But no, I think the truth is those companies that do, they follow a repeatable, consistent process for identifying and solving issues. And so at Montgomery & Company, the process we're sharing today, that this helped us grow 20% year over year. And it helped us survive a trauma year, is how I call it, where we lost 100% of our team. Helped us survive COVID and kind of come out of that thriving. So I think we can go to the next slide.
Let me ask you a couple questions here, if you don't mind, because really, this is really interesting, given the fact we just went through a push year, right? It was almost as if the whole year were a sprint rather than, the normal. And a couple things kind of come to mind. One is, if you have a team of 5 that wants to go to 10 million, that immediately it makes me think the business is the people that you have inside, right? You're meeting with 5 people. You have to have people you're really confident in, right? If you want to push for 10, because that's what you have, right? All the process, everything's going to stem from the core group. But once when people are thinking like that this year, that question for you, Joe, is how much are people thinking about personal goals in this outside of business goals? Because there's so much, everything we kind of started about by talking about people being really buried and a lot of stress this year, a lot of fog, et cetera. Are people just setting business goals, or they're also setting personal goals about how much they want to work, whether or not they can take a vacation, whether or not they actually have been able to take a vacation, right? Is there balance being built in by firms that you're seeing, or is it, what are you getting from the companies that you're working with?
I'm definitely seeing a mix, but I think it's a good point. Was told this past week by a young operations manager that she wants to be 40 under 40. And so we put that on the 10-year target for her. Was told by an owner a couple months ago, but this is just somebody that owns their own firm with a contractor. So kind of sole prop accounting firm, bookkeeping firm. And she said, Joe, I'd really like to just work 20 hours a week. And so we put that on her 10-year target. So absolutely, I think it's really important to do that. We can, if we're not careful, spend so much time actually being intentional in the business, and we forget it was actually made to support us and not the other way around.
I think that's really important, because I don't know, maybe it's because I'm getting a lot more gray hair now, but I certainly think that 10 years goes by in a blink, right? So I think it's interesting that you have this 3-year set of objectives, and then you have this 10-year vision, this 10-year target. I think from a balance perspective, that's incredibly wise, and something I wish I had probably put in place along the way.
Mm. Yeah, so that's it, Chris, and that's it pretty much. These are 6 ways. And I hope we can start to walk into 2021 with a little bit more intention and a little bit of focus. We all get a pass for 2020, and I'm sure all of you that are here did an amazing job leading your team, serving your clients. I think we were definitely the first responders of the financial side of this crisis. And I'm excited to see how firms pivot and how firms get creative about helping their clients in 2021. But if you've been stuck, and if you have felt a little bit alone or a little bit lost, maybe like you've taken some steps back with running your firm itself, hopefully these are some tools you can use. Maybe take some time with your team. Try to figure out who can you pull in as your key leaders on your team. Schedule a day with those guys. Start off talking about who you are, where you want to go, your vision. Move into some quarterly goal setting, and then maybe talk about some ways you can set some numbers and start to measure those together. And then set up the weekly leadership team meetings, make them recur. What doesn't get scheduled doesn't get done, is what I found for myself. So,
Excellent. Well, I think, looking what we have here, Joe, what I see is, obviously businesses are the combination of people, the processes, and the systems. And we touched a lot so far on, leadership team, right? Get the right people, get the right processes in place by creating the structure and the roles and measuring, right? We have to have the vision, we have to have the objectives, and then you have to measure everything. Obviously, Lisio, we're in the business of systems, and back to this notion of year of the client, which has actually a double meaning for us. It's making sure our clients are doing great, and their clients in turn are also doing really well. I want to take a minute just to kind of show a couple of things that we've been working on to really help firms and firm leadership improve focus. So maybe we can take a couple minutes to maybe take a quick, brief tour of some items that a lot of the audience today who isn't as familiar with Lisio might not be aware are out there in market. So let me go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and show you. If you haven't seen Lisio before, we are really a client experience product. We're all about delivering client experience 2.0, which is, if you have information everywhere, right? You've got information buried in email, clients are text messaging, We've got an electronic signature solution we have to go log into somewhere else. We have a file sharing system we have to go log into yet another place. Maybe we're encrypting email. There's a lot to juggle. And as we're juggling all those items, we're creating absolutely a lot of silos, right? We can't see across the firm to understand what's outstanding, what's been communicated with clients, and so forth. So in order to rationalize all that, to bring all that information, all that power together, so when a client has a question, we can service them better. Or if something, if we're afraid as a firm, we might be having balls kind of slip through the cracks, so to speak. There's a way to prevent that. That's what systems are for, right? Well, as we do that, something we learned along the way is that typically owners of businesses are the ones that are the most overwhelmed. They're getting the most email, they're having the most stuff thrown at them, and they need to balance everything else we just talked about, right? Organizing the company, creating the vision, editing the ideas, and so forth. So we want to be able to provide relief to that group. And that's where Listio can help. So if you haven't seen Listio before, it runs off of we have a homepage concept where your inbox is here, and the inbox is only client communication. It's only client communication. So you don't have to fight through all the spam, all the other stuff. If you ever had inbox 500 or worse, right, you know how much time can get drained just fighting through that. So this is going to immediately put the focus right on items that require attention because they're from your clients, right? 2021, the year of the client. So if we want to get deeper though, and we want to be able to delegate, if we want to pivot out of having to do everything, we have concepts like accounts. So I come out to an account. If I have a client called City Lights Bookstore, what's interesting about this is when this client wants to communicate with us, I might not need to be on every communication with them. In fact, I might want to delegate that to the team, right? Joe said it earlier, delegate and elevate. So right now I'm on this client service team. So when a client messages in, I will be on the list, right? But maybe I'm at the point now where Tim, who's also on the list, is so good at handling everything, I can remove myself. That's how I can get away from getting every single email or getting CC'd on everything. Once I've done that, messages will come in. If I ever want to see them, I can always go to the messages section and I can search for messages that have come in. So I'm always in the loop when I want to be, or when I care to be, when I need to be, but I'm not getting all of the distraction of everything coming to me, my either having to deal with it or reroute it. So client service team really helps firms get their arms around communication while also improving their focus. Same thing can happen if something's happening here and there's a task, I need to do something for a client, or I'm worried that something hasn't gotten done. I can go to the task section. I can see, hey, there's no open tasks that we're waiting on for this client. Well, that's great. And if the client calls in, I need to delegate something, I can just create a task. So I want to create a to-do for, let's say, Tim. We just saw him. He deals with this account. For Christine, I can create a task here. Please call Christine this week. Number here. So I can delegate this with a due date, and all I need to do is hit create task, and now I'll have visibility as to whether or not something actually gets done. So I can go ahead and fire that off. It goes right in my task list so I can see when Tim completes it. And it's, of course, related to City Lights Bookstore. So if I go back over there, we're going to see that transparency that this item is still outstanding. Okay, it's open right now. So anyway, so the idea here is we need to get to focus. And we also want to help you compartmentalize. So a lot of firms that we're talking to are dealing with the fact, and you can raise your hand if you're doing this right now. If your clients have your personal cell phone number, and your clients aren't afraid to text you after hours, right? Carlene, I've seen some people raising their hands here, which is fantastic. If they have your cell phone number and they're hitting you on a Sunday, right? Asking if you have a meeting on a Monday, that kind of thing. We want to get you your cell phone back. So why not give them an app? Let's give them an app that they can use. So we created a lot of great features for you that, for example, if I get the text message in, I can go ahead and respond to Christine Client, and I'm going to put it in her City Lights bookstore account. I can say, we are confirmed for Tuesday. Talk to you then. I can go ahead, send the message, but I can also use this notify via text feature. Notify via text. Really powerful stuff, right? So instead of using my personal cell phone, I just touch that client, my watch just beeped, the whole thing. It goes straight to their mobile phone. And it keeps them out of email, and it redirects them from your personal cell phone. So those are ideas, and I don't want to take too much more time. I'll get back to Joe here. He's the star of the show. But I want to put some ideas out there in the event that, from a focus perspective and from a compartmentalization perspective, you want to make a change in 2021. Okay. So Joe, let's bring it back to you. That's Lissio in a nutshell. Okay.
Cool. No, thanks for sharing, Chris. And we use Licio Montgomery and Company. It was hugely helpful in helping us kind of focus our inboxes. So, yeah, so I think what we know, just to kind of wrap it up, right, is that our teams need purpose, connection, and direction. Small business owners need help. And tax season is just around the corner. So I know there's risk, and I know some of us are tired, but there's massive opportunity. I think let's remember what's at stake: our teams, our clients, our families, our balance. But what's also possible? What's possible if we get this right? And if we can start 2021 with intention. Group Up was kind of made to do this. I believe that if accounting firms across this country are better, small business across this country will be better. And I'm glad there's people like Licio that can build technology to help us. Group Up just wants to be somebody to help too. Let's go on to the next slide if we can.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited to share, just a couple thoughts about community. Let's go ahead and go to the next. I'll kind of go through these pretty quick, but some of you have a community and there's a lot out there that's good. If you found one, work it, stay there, leverage relationships, build relationships, network, grow. If you don't have one and you're looking for one, maybe some questions you can ask. Is the group you're looking at, are they objective? Are they unbiased in the advice they give? If you start to regularly contribute, you actually start to share and feed this group. Are your contributions rewarded? Is there financial benefit for you to do that? Who calls the shots? So who's in the back room making the decisions on what vendor partners we go with and what technologies are the best? Is this firm led? Do you get to call the shots with this group? And then is there a depth of experience in any coaching that might be a part? Some groups have coaching, some don't. It depends on what you're looking for. But when you do need help, can you go to other firm owners who have been there, done that, who went through PPP and other things with you, who understand, can help you grow, specific to an accounting firm? Let's go on to the next, Chris.
Sounds good, Joe.
So Open Firm by Group Up. Pretty new. This is starting very soon. It's a diverse group of accountants, a community of accountants working to get better together. We're accountant-led. We're built by accountants. The resources that are on here are only built by other firms, just like you. And they're self-rated and vetted by firms. Networking opportunities. I love, Stephen actually made a comment, something about being alone. That was early on, but he had a good group of practice management, good practice management group. And somebody was an expert, he's saying, and he worked up Excel worksheets and helped everybody in the group move forward. This is why Group Up was born too. We had a similar story where we just started a Slack thread with 7 other firms in the middle of PPP. And we shared our PowerPoints, we shared our webinar templates, we shared our proposable templates, right? Some firms are unproposable. I was the guy who led the proposable stuff, the sales stuff. Each of our firms, by working together, booked an extra $100,000 of business, which for a lot of firms is well over 10%, could be over 10% of the revenue. We did that by working together, and we did it in 2 weeks. So how many people are on this webinar? 27? How many accounting firms are in your area? So I'd ask you, how many firms are you with locally? Maybe not even locally. We don't even have to be bound by that anymore, right? But how can we as an accountant community, like we never have before, group up, team up? Let's get our firms in an intentional, healthy place. Let's attract the best talent that's out there. And then let's work together collaboratively to help small business across this country and help our client. Let's do that. What if 2021 looked like that? I'll probably go off, but that's what gets me excited every day. Group Up is here to help. Let's go to the next. And let's go to the last one, Chris. So here's just a couple of ways. I would love to hear the story, to hear your story. If you're on this call today, this webinar, would love to hear your PPP and tax season and just 2020 journey as a firm. Share horror stories, talk about ways that we can help each other. Would love to do that. Would love to invite anybody on this call to join Open Firm, be a part of it, be a part of the initial group. There's a small group that started, but would love to welcome you into that. If you'd like to connect, that's my email. I'll be around. I'm on LinkedIn, but email me. Would love to connect with you.
Thank you, Joe. I'm always inspired by your insights and your generosity. You are always so giving. So thank you for again taking your time to help. Maybe, and I hope this is helpful to our audience today, but to shed some light. And I look forward to talking with you again soon.
Yeah, Chris, thanks so much for having me on. It's a pleasure. Thanks for everybody who came and joined. Hope to see you around.
Wonderful. Have a great rest of the day, everybody. I appreciate you all.